Have you ever had so much going on at once that you couldn't get any one thing done? There is a reason behind why doing more actually leads to getting less done. Work in progress, or WIP, measures the current number of items in progress for a given process. And when we overload a process, just like overloading our brain with too many things to do at once, the process breaks down. Whether it's tasks on a Kanban board or the number of tabs open on your computer, having too much in progress at once scatters our energy and makes it harder to move any one thing to finish. In this video, we will demonstrate that if we manage our work in progress and shift our focus from starting things to finishing them, well, we can see many results such as raising our productivity, reducing the time people have to wait, and increasing our quality of the things we deliver. In many organizations, though, being busy means being productive. But what we often fail to realize is that staying busy doesn't often get the results we want. Think about this example. Consider traffic on the highway during rush hour. If the lanes get too busy, productivity, which is the movement of cars, it drops to zero as traffic grinds to a halt. Let's go a little deeper into what this looks like. Pretend you take away one lane of traffic from a 4-lane highway. Now, since 25% of this capacity is now gone, you'd expect each lane to get 25% busier. And you'd expect everyone's travel time to increase by 25%. But this is not what happens in reality. The impact of travel time is actually much greater. By simply adding a few more cars, we created congestion and traffic jams, adding delays of hours or more. The resulting impact of travel time is not just 25%, but a factor of 2 or 3 times greater the original travel time. So I'm going to ask you this. Is busy always a good measure of productivity? So in these applications, to manage their WIP in traffic, many metropolitan areas have come up with a creative solution. They found that if they had these special lights for the on-ramps to highways, they could control the flow of incoming cars and manage their WIP so that we avoid those congestion and traffic jams. So the point of telling this whole story is that to understand WIP and the impacts it has, first we have to visualize it. If we don't visualize it, we can't see the congestion pile up, and we automatically think that adding more or doing more or being busier means being more productive. So how do we transfer this insight into the workplace, where the WIP we manage isn't cars on the highway, but it's projects and tasks and calendar items? A Kanban board can be a useful tool to start. The benefit of using a Kanban board is it allows us to see things piling up. In fact, we can even prevent pileups from happening by setting WIP limits so that each column can only hold a certain number of tasks at a time. WIP limits help us finish what we have in progress before starting more. Without them, it's easy to fall into the habit of adding more work and never actually finishing what we've started. While it might feel more productive to be everywhere at once and to be doing a lot of things for everyone, the cost of adding all these things to our pile and all the context switching is high, and it can leave us drained. For instance, think about a day when you have back-to-back meetings, how hard it is to bring your best thinking forward. A study showed that this excessive context switching can drain our productivity by as much as 40%. Here's another way to visualize it. Let's say there's a software team with 3 different stakeholders, and they want to keep all 3 happy, so they split their time across all 3. In their first sprint, they do a little bit of work, make a little bit of progress for each stakeholder. And this feels good as we complete their sprints because it feels like they're staying busy. But as you can see, because they're splitting their time across all 3, none of them actually gets finished until very much later. Turns out we've hit a dead end. The way we organized our work guarantees that nothing actually gets done until the end. So what's the alternative? Instead of trying to satisfy all 3 stakeholders at once, we prioritize the most important one to do first. We might still have other features in our backlog, but by setting priorities and only working on one at a time, we're able to finish each more quickly. Only after we finish that one do we move to the next. In the first approach, we tried to make everyone happy by doing a little bit each sprint, and nothing got delivered until the end. But now, not only do we deliver everything sooner, but we do it with more ease and agility. Take a look at this. The cost of context switching is high and difficult to measure. So when we tried that first approach, we're not seeing all the gaps and all the stress and all the context switching and the delays it causes. So when we do a more iterative approach, not only is it quicker, but it's more steadfast. Not to mention, context switching makes our end product worse in quality, especially when we're working with complexity, like in software. When there's too much work in progress, it's easy to get overwhelmed. Similarly to when you're at home, trying to cook dinner and clean and do laundry all at the same time, you probably will forget what's on the stove and come back to something scorched. So, starting many things at once creates complexity, and this leads to blind spots. This is what can make us have worse quality in the things we do. So when we eliminate WIP, we eliminate complexity, and we're going to get something better at the end. So if you work in fields that deal with complexity, whether you're a business owner, a software developer, a project manager, or a creative, it's time for you to take back your energy, your focus, and your productivity by stop starting things and start finishing them. This brings us to a key point around knowledge work. Knowledge work, like anything that requires creativity and problem solving, it's an emergent process, not a linear one. This means we need to rethink what productive means and redefine how we manage creative work. We can actually do better work when we have space to breathe. In fact, some of history's greatest aha moments were inspired in periods of slack. For instance, Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity while sitting underneath an apple tree. And Albert Einstein published his most groundbreaking theories while living the unexciting life of a patent clerk. It's these moments of slack that often bring out the real genius of our work. Moments like chatting around the water cooler, idle play, sitting in awkward silence. It might feel strange to not pack our day with activities, but if we allow for some slack, we might actually find more of these aha moments that reveal enormous breakthroughs of genius we wouldn't otherwise have reached. This is also true at the organizational level. You might think that keeping your people busy is productive, but in fact, it is killing productivity. When people are too busy for a quick chat, we end up working in the dark with bad information and make wrong decisions. And by the time these people finally become available to offer their advice, it's too late. This is why having Slack in our system, in our backlogs, in our schedules is so important. It creates space to have tiny, infrequent connections that in the end help us see past more obstacles. Even though it might feel less productive to have gap in your schedule, it's required if you want to be able to flow your work, have quick feedback with your customers, and have more creative breakthroughs. So we've covered some deep subject matter, and know that it's okay if it takes a little bit for all these stories to sink in. But what we want to get at is that WIP is a concept that originated in the factory, and it's applicable to the things we do in our daily lives. In a factory floor, you could picture if they had WIP just piling up, there'd be no room to move. Assembly lines would buckle under the weight of congestion, and raw materials would be sitting in the warehouse collecting dust and rotting away. But the vindictive fact is that when we deal with WIP in our knowledge work, it's invisible. The assembly lines are ideas in your head. They're conversations with your peers. So there's no factory floor to see all this corruption when we don't pay attention to WIP. So that's why we need to use tools like the Kanban board so we can visualize it and take accountability for the thing that is really going to make or break our creative breakthrough. So I encourage you to look into a method like Scrum or Kanban. These methods force us to recognize our WIP and to manage it. Work in progress is kind of hard to see in our daily lives, but it's essential that we understand it. Think about it. The next time you say yes and make a new commitment, are you honoring your WIP limits? Are you taking inventory of those things sitting idly by, collecting dust in your warehouse? Are you saying yes just to stay busy? Well, if you are, it won't work.